President Trump will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Japan next month. Now, this meeting comes amid an escalation of what author Jim Sciutto calls a new type of warfare. His new book, it's called The Shadow War Inside Russia's and China's Secret Operations to Defeat America, and it's on big time. It highlights tactics he says both countries use to attack the U.S. and its allies, but fall below the threshold of starting a shooting war. Try saying that 3 times. Sciutto is CNN's chief national security correspondent and anchor. He's also served as chief of staff to America's ambassador to China from 2011 to 2013, and we're delighted that you're at the table, Mr. Sciutto.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So we all have heard the term Cold War, trade war, but this shadow war is a different kind of animal, you say, and they use very different tactics like?
It is. It's a war that they are waging, Russia and China are waging on the U.S., and we're not fighting back, and only very recently came to terms with it. And I think Americans are aware of some of the fronts of this war, certainly election interference, which continues, but they're not aware of others. Russia and China have both put weapons in space. Lasers, kamikaze satellites, kidnapper satellites. China has developed a satellite that could grab other satellites out of orbit. These are satellites we depend on for the way we live every day of our lives, GPS, et cetera, but also the military does, crucially. There is a new great game under the waves. Submarine warfare between the U.S., Russia, and China. Submarines, they're quieter, they're getting closer to U.S. shores. That's a way to project nuclear power without warning right up to the U.S. homeland.
And what are they trying to
Multi-front
get,
war.
Jim, what are they trying to get? And you point out in the book that we don't seem prepared for what is happening to us.
No question. They're trying, in China's case, they're trying outright to surpass the U.S. This is not a secret. They say it publicly in speeches. It's in their documents, their national security documents. They want to achieve what they view as their rightful place on top of the world. And almost invariably, national security folks will say China is the bigger of the two threats. But Russia, very big threat. And theirs is more of a zero-sum game. Any opportunity to stick their finger in the eye of the United States, they view as a win.
I spoke with the FBI director last year, and you think about what the FBI does in terms of countering terrorist threats. He said his top counterintelligence priority is China. How many spies, Chinese spies, are in America trying to steal and commit economic espionage?
Thousands here, and I spoke to the FBI's former head of counterintelligence, and tens of thousands in China. I mean, he talked about it in terms of they have a national service program almost for smart young people there to hack their way into U.S. public and private sector secrets, and they do it with enormous success.
They're stealing seed technology, agriculture technology, medical technology.
Artificial intelligence, but also, crucially, national security technology. I have a chapter in the book about how, over the course of 4 years, before they were detected, a small team of 4 people stole secrets about the F-35, the C-17, and the F-22. And today, China is flying planes that look remarkably like those planes.
Yeah. So, Jim, give us some context in terms of before 9/11, there were people who were saying, connect the dots, and there were other people who were asleep at the switch, to mix my metaphors. In this case, do people know the threat is real and they're just trying to catch up, or are they still blind to the nature of the threat?
It took time. It was belated, but they know today. I spent time out in the field. This is the way U.S. submarine commanders talk about the conflict today. It's the way people in the NSA operations centers fighting cyber attacks every day. It's the way they talk about it. It's the way U.S. diplomats in Ukraine, et cetera. It is not the way the U.S. president talks about this threat. He will not publicly identify. In fact, alarmingly, he will often sound very much like Russia on these points.
But what is that? What's the practical result of that, though? Because when you, as you know, when you talk to officials, they'll say, forget the rhetoric. We're on the case here, and the rhetoric doesn't matter.
Well, folks, and to be clear, in this book, I spread the blame around because through multiple administrations of Republican and Democratic parties, missed signals over time. Everybody thought they could get it right. The Bush administration thought they could get it right. Obama thought he'd get it right, saw the light later. Trump administration, not unusual in that respect. Unusual, though, in that when you see the hostility, the president still won't recognize it and state it publicly. And everybody across the board says the U.S. cannot win this war, defend itself properly without leadership from the top, and they don't have the leadership from the top.
And will this trade war with China make this worse?
Well, this is the thing. And again, credit where credit is due. The president is confronting China, for instance, on the theft of trade secrets to a degree that previous administrations would not. They knew about it, but they said, listen, we could get it right, bring them into the fold. They would change their behavior. They have not. The president is confronting. The trouble is what the president is asking China to do is to change its economic model, its state model. This is the way it has achieved success in its view. When you battle like that and both have advantages, will China back down? I'll tell you, we have internal domestic politics, so does China. The last thing a Chinese leader is going to want to do is be seen as backing down to the U.S. president.
Help people understand why presidential leadership is so important. Without it, what doesn't happen?
Well, things like allocation of resources, making decisions to counter the threat, defending U.S. assets, taking, where necessary, offensive steps to counter this threat. That requires presidential leadership. It matters that this president has only had one cabinet-level discussion of election security. That's a problem.
Only one.
Only one. It matters that this president, you heard this from Kirstjen Nielsen as she left, it matters that this president, that his senior advisors can't even bring up the issue of election interference with him because he won't go there.
Yeah. You made a point of saying you're not writing this book for politics. You're writing it, you said at the end, as a concerned American. I was very touched by that.
And I am. I spent years in Russia and China and seeing each front of this war. I've been on the ground in Ukraine. I've been on a U.S. sub under the Arctic. I've been in the NSA operations rooms. I've been on a U.S. spy plane over the South China Sea. I see Americans in uniform and out of uniform fighting this battle every day because they care about protecting their country. I care about the safety of the country. I've got 3 kids. I want them to live in a world as free as I was able to grow up in and travel the world. And you have 2 countries here that are intent on changing the way the world operates. And if the country and if our leaders don't fight back, it's going to be a very different world.
All right, Jim Sciutto, you've written, it was really,
Isn't he
really
good?
You're very good.
Oh, my goodness.
You're a great
I'm gonna stay
storyteller,
here.
too. Yeah. No, you're very good. It was a really, really good
Really
read.
good book.
Thank you very
It's
much.
Really
Thank
smart.
you.
Yeah.
I think you should send a couple copies over to the White House.
Okay, yeah, I'll drop them off myself.
Yeah, I think you should send an autograph, too. The Sciutto War, it's available today wherever you like to buy your books.